Hello bookworms, I'm Hannah, and today's video is a spotlight review of another Women's Prize long list nominee. I'll be going over the synopsis, introducing the characters, and discussing the book's strengths and weaknesses while avoiding major spoilers. Today I'm reviewing The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock by Imogen Hermes Gawar. This is Gawar's debut novel, and I am highly curious to see what she publishes next. I will definitely be pre-ordering her next book. Before I get into the synopsis, can we take a moment to appreciate how beautiful this book is? A lot of thought went into creating a book that reflects the 18th century. For example, the cover design is derived from layering two popular 18th century silks, which have been modified to include a mermaid's tail. This book is as aesthetically pleasing as the courtesans that grace its pages. If you want to learn more about the research that went into the design, I'll drop a link in the description box to more information. When perusing this year's long list, I elected to read this book for one simple reason. I am a sucker for anything having to do with mermaids. The synopsis beckoned like a siren song. I was never going to be able to resist this book. The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock is historical fiction set in 1780s London, where a man's life is upended by the gift of a dubious infant mermaid's corpse, and a widowed courtesan frets over the uncertainty of her future in light of her waning beauty. We're first introduced to Jonah Hancock. He's a man of little means, descended from a long line of merchants. He's a portly, 45-year-old man described as rat-like in figure, with thinning hair, rough hands, and threadbare clothing. Despite his unfavorable outward appearance, inwardly, he's a man of substance. He's a caring, respectful man of integrity that we immediately sympathize with because we learn in the opening pages that he has experienced great tragedy in his life. Could it be coincidence that our leading man in a book about the ocean and mermaids is named after a biblical prophet said to have been swallowed by a fish? The other primary protagonist is Angelica Neal, a woman nearing her 30s who finds herself in a precarious financial position. After she was orphaned at 14, she became a courtesan. She was able to break free of that life when she married a wealthy duke. When we first meet her, she's been a widow for 3 months, and her husband neglected to remember her in his will. She revels in her independence, choosing to sleep with wealthy men whenever she pleases. But money is a lingering concern. She knows she needs to find a new suitor to pay the bills, and she's aware that her beauty won't last forever. In addition to these two likable protagonists, Gawar's book hinges on a slew of well-drawn side characters. There are 4 that I want to mention. The first is Mr. Hancock's niece, who goes by Suki. I have a theory about the significance of her name. Suki hopes to marry an elderly gentleman so that he'll die shortly after their union and she can go on to live her life however she pleases. I think it's not coincidental that her name is so close to Selkie, those mythological seal women who are pulled from the sea to be good, obedient wives, but secretly long to return to the ocean. The second character I want to mention is Eliza Frost. She works as a companion to Angelica. These two women are a contrast of opposites. Where Angelica is flighty, indulgent, and carefree, Mrs. Frost is judicious, pragmatic, and regimented. She's another example of a character whose name alludes to her strident, inflexible qualities. While Angelica wants to retain her independence, Mrs. Frost is insistent that she ought to return to working for Mrs. Chappell. Which brings us to the third character I want to talk about. Mrs. Chappell is an elderly, obese, unmarried woman. 3 attributes that would have been unfavorable for a woman in the 18th century. To make matters worse, she is the madam of a high-class brothel, though it's never called a brothel. I'll be talking more about that and the significance of her name later in this video. Mrs. Chappell extends an invitation to Angelica to return to working for her, but Angelica defiantly refuses. The final character that bears mentioning is Polly, a mulatto courtesan. Because of her skin color, she's considered exotic, and men pay more to sleep with her. Class differences and the inability to break free of one's station in life are a running theme in Gawar's book, and she pairs that with a peripheral study of race through Polly's character. One of the book's few flaws is how underutilized Polly's character remains, and the lack of satisfying resolution where her story is concerned. The book's greatest weakness, and I use that word lightly because I think this is a wonderful book, is uneven pacing. In the absence of significant highs and lows, The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock lacks momentum. At times, my eyelids felt heavy, and I found myself wondering, where is this going? It was curiosity about the mermaid that drove me to the next page, and the beauty of Gowar's writing is what made sating my curiosity such a delight. It took me a while to appreciate Gowar's artistry because my initial impression of her linguistic style was muddied by my discontent with the tepid pacing. But she effectively transports us to 18th century London by balancing luxurious surroundings with odorous emissions. We read of rosewater custard and heavy brocade curtains, riotously worked with birds and flowers, and of rooms filled with the clamor and textures and colors of competing quality goods. But we're also reminded of dampness and vegetable-ish smells, of alleyways with runnels of piss, of unwashed bodies, and bad breath that reeks of decay. At one point, we're in a carriage with a woman who lifts her skirts to urinate. We find ourselves trapped in a confined space with the mineral, creaturous smell of her warm urine. Some of the most lyrical passages emerge from these elusive little interludes woven throughout the book. They constitute my favorite parts of this book. Through these mystifying interludes, Mr. Hancock's schemes, Angelica's desire for independence, and Polly's search for identity, Gowar continually explores themes of ownership and repression. She suggests that ideas and imagination can be more intoxicating and satisfying than physical acquisition and reality. In other words, some things should not be contained. In addition to these elusive little passages, I loved Gowar's slant on bordellos. Mrs. Chappell's name means from the chapel. She's known as Mother Chapelle or the Abbess. Her house is not called a brothel, it's known as the nunnery. Her courtesans dress in virginal white, and their customers are known as Old Faithfuls. One of Mrs. Chappell's gorgeous footmen is described as wearing a wig that's as white as angels' wings, and he smells so clean as if he, quote, fell direct out of the blue sky. And let's not forget Angelica, who used to work for Mrs. Chappelle. Angelica, whose name means angel. For Angelica, sex is currency. It's the only resource she has at her disposal, as it would have been for many women during that time when little importance was placed on women's education. Angelica embraces her sexuality and uses it to her advantage. Here's a passage that beautifully articulates what I'm talking about. It tickles her to see men grown stupid when they gaze upon her, all soft-eyed and slow in the head. In fact, it inflames her to find that her eyes and body and manner drive them out of their wits, to feel the humidity of their palms when they remove their gloves, or watch the involuntary twitch of their members when she moves close towards them, to discover that secret other world of commerce in which she is at least as powerful as they. All of this provokes in her the most exquisite excitement, and she goads them into ever greater passions of fever and fury. She likes to be pursued, but she does not feel she is ever captured, for it is only by her own decision that they lay hands on her. In a book that explores sexuality and lust, feminine allure and love, what better symbol could Gowar have chosen than a mermaid? She demonstrates an adept handling of magical realism, and she brings a fresh take on mermaids to the page, one that is elusive and mesmeric. The Mermaid in Mrs. Hancock is an ocean. Beneath its glimmering surface is great depth and treasures hidden fathoms below. I'm so glad this book made the long list, and I really hope all of you get a chance to read it. I don't think it's out yet in the US, but I purchased my copy from Book Depository, so you could get it now. If you've already read The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock and you're looking to read something with a similar tone, narrative quality, and pacing, check out The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, The Gods of Gotham by Lindsay Fay, Russia by Shirley Barrett, The Lie Tree by Frances Harding, or The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. I'll see you soon in my next video, which will be another review of a Women's Prize Longlist nominee. Thanks, everybody!